You know that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup? During distressing times, this is more true than ever. We have to protect our own energy so that we can turn around and provide psychological safety to our teams. I'm Ann Murphy of the Empowered Fundraiser, a professional development company that centers frontline fundraisers to help you level up your skill set, master your mindset, and learn to lead from where you are. So what is distress? Is it the same thing as stress? Well, kind of. It's like stress, but on steroids. Stress responses are considered a normal adaptation to something going on around us or inside us. They're very healthy, normal responses to scary stuff going on. Distress occurs when stress is happening over a prolonged period or it's particularly acute. Distress tends to manifest itself in different ways than stress does in your body. So I know for me, stress kind of feels like a little beehive of activity in my chest. Whereas distress feels like I've got an elephant sitting on my chest. And even just the act of breathing becomes something that I have to focus on. And then there's the collective distress we feel in our teams. When everyone is a little or a lot distressed, it changes the dynamics of the group. Signals that this is happening include an uptick in triangulation. I see this a lot. When people are worn down, they don't have the energy to deal directly. They will tend to maybe talk behind each other's back. They definitely don't have the wherewithal for critical conversations or constructive criticism. And so you see that kind of toxic fanning out rather than direct dealing. That's an example of how I see distress manifesting itself in teams. Why do we care about how we manage distress? Well, I think the biggest reason is that we live in distressing times, like pandemic, systemic racism, natural disasters, you name it. We're in an environment now where it feels like one thing after another. And what about the fundraising world? What are some of the stressors that go on inside our industry that make it distressing? I made a video about the downside of careers in major gift fundraising, and I talked about sexual harassment, bad bosses and bad leaders, and metrics. The impact, the long-term impact of those three things alone is enough to run us ragged. Right? And then you've got toxic masculinity. You've got toxic coworkers and board members and donors. Those things are all distressing. If you have super frequent travel, that can create a baseline of stress that eventually just becomes chronic. And then you've got mindset stuff. You've got instincts to people please. You've got imposter thoughts. You've got self-doubt. And those last three I spotlight in my newsletter. So if you want to know more about mindset stuff, definitely subscribe to my newsletter below. Those are ideas on what goes on in the big world around us, as well as within our industry that can cause distress. I don't know about you, but I feel like those things are here to stay. So learning to lead during distressing situations is really important because that's what we're in. I want to talk about common responses to distress and what to avoid. To me, the most common responses have a lot in common with burnout. So you see passive-aggressive behavior. Like if you ever want to start an email with "per my previous email," you know it's time to step away from the computer. People shutting down in meetings, people freezing. Like I know when I'm under acute amounts of distress, just the act of opening up my email and figuring out what the heck I'm supposed to do with this mess seems big. You see people angry, you see people exhausted, you see apathy. None of these things are good in fundraising. And it's important to consider the impact of distress on people from all backgrounds, right? It's going to be different for me than it will be for someone in a different generation or a different race or ethnicity or sexual identity. All of these things intersect in different ways. My recommendation is to listen and observe and learn. Don't project your own experience onto others. Problematic communication is a big one. It's a fine line because you want to be communicative and you want to be vulnerable, but you also don't want to overshare. And you don't want other people to overshare either, because some toothpaste you can't put back in the tube. So you want to be thoughtful because everybody's emotions are on blast, and it can be really easy to overshare or encourage someone else to overshare. Also to avoid is escalation. It's really easy to think that running things up the flagpole is going to make it better, but that's not always the case. So you really want to be thoughtful about when it's time to run something up the flagpole. It's definitely not a panacea. Also, you can't ignore what's going on. It's not going to go away by not dealing with it. And finally, projection. Don't project your feelings onto other people. Let them have their own experience. I would love to know what you see during times of distress. How are the people around you manifesting that? Will you leave me a comment below? I'd love to learn from you as well. All right, I want to talk about leadership, and the most important thing is that the domino effect of your ability to lead during distressing times is huge. So as people see you protecting your energy and providing psychological safety for others, that gives them the cues that they need in order to do the same. So it's incredibly worthwhile for you to put energy into learning how to lead during distress because you impact the whole organization when you do. So here are 3 tools for managing your own and your team's distress. Number 1, ask yourself, so what? Number 2, stay grounded. Number 3, remember, there's work to do. All right, so what? Before you get too invested in the distress, ask yourself, so what? This is just a gut check to be sure that there's a there to be upset about, and that it's not just because you're hungry or tired or you need to exercise. So if this thing is happening, how horrible is it? Is anyone going to die? Will my loved ones be okay? Will I be okay? It's just going through the exercise of asking yourself, so what? If this thing is happening, so what? Just helps you regain perspective on the thing that's causing you distress. All right, staying grounded. I have a couple of rules for myself, and this one's a little silly, but I always say I need to wash my hair twice before making any big decisions when things are kind of crazy going on around me. And the reason I say wash my hair twice is because for sure by that time I will have eaten, slept, exercised, and rested. I don't approach big scary issues if I'm hungry, tired, under-exercised, or unrested. I just give myself that baseline. Another thing I ask myself is, will I still be mad about this in 2 weeks? And if I'm not still going to be upset about it in 2 weeks, then it may not be something that I need to address right away. Sometimes I like to think about things as a leadership exercise. So just to give myself a little bit of a distance from the issue, I watch it like I'm watching a movie, right? It helps me regain my perspective and just keep tabs on how others might experience my behavior as if they were the person watching the movie. I hope that makes sense. I create psychological safety within my teams. So the way that I do that is I do share my own feelings. I will be vulnerable with those who are closest to me. I'll be open and honest about my own distress. I'll encourage people to talk and I will hear them out. I will not pass any judgment on what they share, and I will acknowledge their distress. And here comes the third, and I think most important technique. And this is a toughie because we need to share and bond, and we need to have that esprit de corps of it's us versus the world or us versus the bad guys. But the thing is that as leaders, at the end of the day, we know our teams still have work to do. And so there comes a moment after we've shared and after we've bonded where we need to be able to say to our teams, it's time to get back to work. It's time to get back to work. For more ideas on mastering your mindset, leveling up your skill set, and learning to lead from where you are, check out these videos on one side or the other. Please do hit like if you found this useful. Definitely subscribe because I upload new videos every week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this was helpful.